Let's go, girls. Come on.
From New York City to Los Angeles, Powered Up with Beck and Franklin is giving women of all ages permission to live the life they've always dreamed of. Why live in black and white when you can choose the brilliance of 3D and Technicolor? Each week, Sandra, Beck, and Linda Franklin and their high-powered guests will be here to cheer you on, to share their challenges, their successes, and what they've learned along the way. It's all about women supporting women. The stories and practical tips on sex, beauty, money, and so much more are designed to help you reconnect to the powerful woman you are. Fabulous knows no limits. Now it's time for you to expand your boundaries. Here are Sandra Beck and Linda Franklin.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here with Linda Franklin and this is Powered Up Talk Radio. And we're going to cover a lot of stuff today, Linda. We're going to visit with Randi Maggid and we're going to learn how to fall in love with our life again. That's always fun. And we're going to also talk about her healing journey. And Linda, as we've worked through Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, we've learned some great principles along the way. But one of the things that I've found interesting is the myriad in ways people heal themselves. We've talked to psychics, we've talked to shamans, we've talked to healers, we've talked to energy workers, we've talked to light workers. There's so many different options today for people to go on their own healing journey. I think of the Lady of the Rose Temple, Lucia Weitzman, and how she does her inspired writing. And today's guest talks about breathing, like a breathwork facilitator. And I thought, this is so cool because, you just had a great massage. I just had some Reiki done. I've experienced lots of acupuncture in my days and clearing out my chakras or energy channels. It's just fun. I love all of it.
Yeah, no, they're all great modalities, and you just have to find the one that works for you. For me, I think that the greatest healing I've had is from the Untethered Soul. I keep going back to the book because I've not found anything that's been a greater comfort than that. And it's so funny, because we always talk, a couple of shows ago, I guess on almost every show, we talk about those voices in our heads and what they're doing there and why they're there and everything. Well, it was really funny because on Saturday afternoon, I was just cruising Netflix, and I came across this movie. I never heard of it before, and I started to watch it. It was a comedy, and it was about this couple. But the thing that was really interesting was that it was showing all the voices in their heads, but they were actually people, actors. So he was there, and there was 5 others in his head, and then there was 5 other people in her head, and everybody sending a different signal. And one I think one is his mother, and one is him as a little kid, and one is somebody else and somebody else. But and they just wouldn't shut up. And so he was just sitting there on the couch with his girlfriend, and he just didn't know which way to go, and the same with her because she's hearing all of the voices inside of her head. So it was a comedy, it wasn't serious, but it is serious. And I just couldn't believe that I was watching that because I had just been reading it in the book, and when you see it like that, it's so real that you have all of these voices pushing and pulling at you all the time.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the Disney kids film Inside Out, where each one of the characters plays the inside of this little girl. And, there's the girl who plays sadness, and there's like Richard Kind is Bing Bong, and Bill Hader is fear, and Phyllis Smith is sadness, and Amy Poehler is joy. And if you haven't seen, it's a kids movie, but it is so darn funny, and it's so such a great way to teach kids the concept of that. But I got a lot out of it as an adult. It's the same kind of thing, whereas, your character had his thoughts, portrayed by different people. The Disney movie Inside Out had the feelings and emotions like joy, sadness, fear, play her internal thoughts, and you could see what was going on in the kid engine. I mean, it's amazing what goes on inside of us.
Yeah, well, I keep changing we talked about it, and it's the psyche, trying to protect us, because we know we know on a level that we don't have any control on the outside world, but this is saying we do have control of our inside world, of ourselves. So that's what it's always trying to do, is, giving us 92,000 options of which way to go, which is the best way to protect ourselves so that we don't get hurt. And so, but to see him walking down the street with these 5 beings following him, and that's what happens. How many times have you walked down the street, and sometimes, in New York it's dangerous because you can get hit by with either a skateboard, a roller, a taxi, people on their cell phone. I'm not paying attention, and I'm saying, oh, wake up, because I'm so in my head that I'm not even paying attention to where I am or what I'm doing. And wow. So it was just really interesting to see that portrayed like that, because that's what happened. And then, then I was watching another program. It was cold and rainy, so I did a lot of television watching. I was watching this HBO series called Big Little Lies, and Reese Witherspoon is in it, and Nicole Kidman and several other people, and it portrayed these 3 or 4 women and their husbands and their children in this town, this well-to-do town in California. They're right on the ocean, and they're all well-to-do, but everybody is hiding something. So what you see is never what you get. So one of them, the husband was beating her up, and the other one had been raped and had a son out of this sexual rape, and another one. It was just. And it was only 6 episodes, so it came very quickly to a conclusion. But it just, people are walking around and they're so full of shame. That word shame, that anybody else is going to find out who they really are. And again, all of these things that we'll do, all these walls that we build up, so that people won't find out who we are. It's like it. Everything that we're reading in the book is you go see a movie or watch television, it's there.
Well, it is. And the book Linda's talking about is Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul. I think it becomes even more interesting at the points at your life where you're in incredible personal pain, or you're in incredible trauma, or because that seems to rip down a lot of the barriers, a lot of the things that we've constructed in our lives, where we can start seeing things more clearly, or we can start making some changes. Because I think pain is a great catalyst to move us from one place to the other.
Or it is, or age. I think age is another one. I think you get to a point where you say, no, I've done this before. I've seen the results. I'm not going to do this anymore. So I'm going to, understanding what you're doing is and being conscious, we talk about that, is the first step. And then, okay, then what am I going to do about it? I know that this isn't working for me anymore, but what is going to become the new normal? And and that's what the book shows you, how to kind of get out of your own way and start just living in the moment, enjoying your life. And it's just it's a breath of fresh air. And when you are conscious enough to start to practice some of these things, and you don't get it right all the time, but if you just start to make these small little steps, it really makes such a difference.
It It does make a difference. It makes a great difference in how we live our lives. And I'd like to bring Randi on. I'd like to have Randi Maggid join us. She's the author of Beverly Hills Concentration Camp. And, it's such a cool title, and it evokes so much, especially for me who spent, 15 years in Beverly Hills real estate, to think that, this was happening right up the street from me is really exciting. I'd like to invite Randi Maggid to the show. Randi, are you with us?
I am. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. So Linda and I talk a lot about the evolution of the soul and people's personal growth. And you've written a great book about, loosely based on your own experiences and your own personal growth, into the point of becoming a healer and a breathwork facilitator.
Yes, I had a very rough childhood living in Beverly Hills, which is ironic. I had the essence of the Holocaust, of a concentration camp, actually in my home because of the energies of my mother. And on the outside of my house was beautiful Beverly Hills. So I was sort of hiding everything that I was going through inside. And I held all that into my body for my whole life, even after I had my kids, and until I had pain. And then I had to work on that and start healing. And I used many different methods, different therapies that were natural and alternative. And I healed myself, and I helped other people heal themselves as I was on this journey. So I realized that I am supposed to be a healer, and I love healing people and helping and being of service.
Well, I think you're on the right show, because that's what Linda and that's our mission, is to raise awareness, to talk about what we're going through, to talk with people and their experiences, because, whereas Linda has found this book to be moving and exciting and wonderful for her, I found it to be good for me, but I have other things because I'm a different person and Linda's a different person. And now we bring a third voice into the show about, we want to talk about some of the things that worked for you, especially because you've explored some of these alternative therapies and so willing to share your own personal story, which I think is amazing. I mean, Linda's wonderful in explaining, what she's gone through. I explain what I've gone through. And I think as women, we learn through storytelling, the stories that we share, the stories that we've experienced, the experiences of friends. That's how we learn and grow. And when we know better, we do better. Now, before we go to commercial break, I'd like you guys to look up Randi's book, and her name is spelled Randi, her last name Maggid, Maggid, Beverly Hills Concentration Camp, A Healing Journey and Memoir. The other book we mentioned was Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul. Great reads. When we come back from the break, we'll be visiting with Randi Maggid.
After these messages.
Information about book publishing is power. The power to change your authoring life, and the power to change the lives of your readers. So join us for Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. You'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now. As the book shepherd, Dr. Judith Briles is in. And each week, she will include publishing professionals that will reveal tips and secrets to the author's journey. If there is a book in you want to listen, learn, and yes, call in with your questions each week. For more on Judith and what she can do for you, check out her website, thebookshepherd.com. It's Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by Author You and The Book Shepherd, with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.
It's words you never heard.
State fairs offer wonderfully wild and wacky summer foods. From chicken fried bacon in Texas to Minnesota spaghetti and meatballs on a stick. There is something about dining at the fair that can make anyone an opsomaniac, or a person who is driven to the point of madness by food. State fairs are famous for their liverwort, or food with no nutritional value. The California State Fair boasts fried Krispy Kreme chicken sandwiches. That's fried chicken and Swiss cheese tucked into a Krispy Kreme donut served with a side of honey sauce. At the Iowa State Fair, you can enjoy a hot beef sundae. That's a big scoop of mashed potatoes over roast beef, covered with gravy, sprinkled with cheddar cheese, and garnished with a cherry tomato to look like a sundae. What's another word for messy food? Ma wallop.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with Sandra Beck and Linda Franklin. Here's more Powered Up with Beck and Franklin.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Franklin and Randi Maggid, and we're talking about the book Beverly Hills Concentration Camp today, and we're visiting with author Randi Maggid, and I want to talk to you about the cover, because the painting is beautiful, or however you had the cover design. There's so much to look at, and for those of you playing along at home, Randi, your book is on Amazon?
It is. Yes.
Okay, so you guys can go to Amazon.com, type in Randi Maggid, RandiMaggid, to take a look at this cover. It is one of the most beautiful pieces of cover art that I've seen, Randi, and I see a lot of books. I get publishers, publicists, book developers, book producers sending me all sorts of stuff. Tell us a little bit about what this is we're looking at on the cover.
Well, while I was writing my book, I had a vision of a girl jumping through a tree and releasing her dark energy and going up into the light and having light come from her heart. And I met a woman in Sedona. Her name is Sherilyn, who paints soul paintings. And as soon as I met her and I saw some of her work, I asked her to paint my cover. So I have the painting in my house, and it's really the tree of life, and there's a Merkuba inside, which represents the male and the female. And it's really about going up into the light and letting go of all your darkness. And there's an owl on top, which is for wisdom and to sort of oversee the mortal life and the spiritual life. And there's many, many layers. Many layers are painted over in this painting. So there's a lot of depth to it.
Well, it's like one of those puzzle pictures you look at to find things, because every time I look at it, I see something different. It reminds me of the Lady in Gold, or the Golden Lady, the painting in New York City, where you just, every time you look at it, you see something else, something more.
Mm-hmm. There's a little hummingbird under her toe, if you can see it, with the little purple, and hummingbirds sprinkle joy. So that's also part of it.
That's wonderful. Now, in the lower corner, there seems to be, is that a clock or an obelisk? What's in the lower corner in the green, like at the lower right-hand corner?
That is her signature, and I believe that's a door, like a door. Yeah.
Well, I think it's beautiful. It's really cool looking. Now, for those who haven't experienced your book yet, tell us a little bit about your story and how your book came to be.
Well, I was walking on the beach one day, and I just had the epiphany. I saw the book in my head, and I knew it was a story I had to tell, a story that I didn't think anybody would believe. Because if you meet me, I seem like a very normal person who had a normal upbringing, if you meet me. So I didn't think anyone would really believe it, and I needed to write it down, and I also knew it would help people. It was just this one moment, and that's where this started. I went home, and I started writing.
So the stories that did they come through you, or did they come from your experience?
They came from my experience, but most of the stories in the book I did not remember. I started writing, and as I wrote, I started to remember more about my childhood, and I had many, many stories, and I put them all together and made the book. And the whole thing took me about 6 years.
Wow. So one of the things that struck me, as I read it, was the fear that was transmitted down from parent to child. And, like my own father and his World War II experience and the Depression, and my mother, they were Depression era. I was a late in life baby. They handed down a lot of money fears to me, never having enough money, not enough money, not enough money. And I know that's like one of the little voices in my head that, Linda was talking about in the opening segment of, kind of these fears that we have. But these are very concrete fears handed down from Holocaust survivors to their child. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because did you carry those fears with you into your marriage? Did you carry them into your own child raising? And then what did you do with them?
Well, in my house, I was always afraid, basically afraid to go outside. My mother didn't want me to go outside because, something might happen. So I always had to second guess if I should go anywhere, if I should go out with my friends, if I should do this or that, or take a class. So I was afraid all the time, afraid of the police car going by in front of my house. I just basically lived with it. When I was afraid, I held it in. I mean, that was part of what caused my pain later, is holding all that fear in and just going out into the world and actually getting a job and working and becoming a normal person, trying to live outside my house, trying to live outside the concentration camp in a way. And that fear did stay with me until I healed. I don't have that fear anymore. I did notice in my children, who have a really, really privileged life, that they had scary feelings every once in a while. And I tuned into that right away. And they started doing breath work, which is a 2-stage pranayama yoga breathing. And it started to release. I also did some NSA, network spinal analysis, with them, which is another type of energy work that has to do with the spine. So I did that just a few times, and that went away for them. It was gone. So I really do believe it does come through your DNA, through your lineage, and will go to your children if you don't take care of it. And I cleared it up, and they're fine now. They don't have those feelings anymore. So.
Did you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
I did. I had 2 brothers.
And did they have the same reactions to what was going on in the house as you did?
I believe they may have had it worse because they're older than me. They're much older than me, 11 and 14 years older. And it was one of my brothers, the oldest one, had a nervous breakdown when he was in college, and he came home. And I was a little girl, about, 7 or 8. And he had this breakdown, and he pretended that he was not pretended, I think he really believed he was a Nazi soldier, and he would yell and scream at me as though he were a soldier, and he would scream in German in the night. So I would run into my room, lock it, hide in the corner of my bed, and just, roll up in a ball and wish I could fall asleep or wait for it to be over. So that was a huge part of my fear. And I know that he didn't mean to do it to me. I mean, I forgive him completely. He passed away now. But it took me a lot of healing to get over even that one little scenario I'm talking about. So I do believe I released that. I don't see any signs of that sort of thing with my kids. I really think, if you take care of things early with children and give them the right environment, they're not going to.
Early is the key. And of course your mom and your dad, they were both survivors.
Both of them. My father died when I was 4, unfortunately, but yeah.
And your mother, obviously she didn't mean to bring all this fear in, but that's just who she was. She didn't know that she was hurting her children.
No, she was raising me with the survival skills that she learned in the concentration camps.
Wow.
So she gave me a ton of food. I mean, food everywhere. And what I mean by that is there was so much of it. And, I basically was a good girl if I ate a lot of food, not a good girl if I didn't. And
well, that's the Jewish way.
That's not really the Jewish way, but if you're a Holocaust survivor, you do it more.
Yeah, it's even more.
Yeah. So
is she still alive?
She is. She's 90.
She
just turned 90. And then also there's, clothing. She didn't give me clothes. I mean, I had one pair of 501 Levi's and maybe 2 shirts. And when you're living in Beverly Hills with, going to school with people in designer clothes and, you never see them wear the same thing twice, it may not seem like a big deal, but when you're a kid and you can only have one pair of pants, it's really odd, and you wonder what is happening. But to my mother, who had one little nightgown when she was in Auschwitz, it's sort of like, okay, you've got clothes, you're good. You have everything you need. That's a lot. So it was a lot to her, but to me, I had to try to balance, living with that and going to school. So eventually I got a job so that I got a job early. I lied about my age so that I could make enough money to buy some clothes.
I wonder what the idea with the clothes were, because, you were in, the money was there. She just didn't, and the food was there, but the clothes was a whole different issue. Yeah, no, I mean, gosh, any survivor that went through that. I mean, I had a friend when I was growing up, and her parents were survivors too. And there's got to be a lot of psychological damage that you pass on to your kids because life was just so damn hard.
Right.
I mean, unbelievably, horrific. I mean, I can't even imagine it. We've seen it in movies and TV, but, unless you were there, I don't think you could even realize how horrific it was.
Mm-hmm. And really no one around knew. None of the neighbors. Now that they read the book, they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But, there's no way they could have known because my mother told me we don't share our problems with anyone else. They're our problems, so we have to deal with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means there was no, a psychologist or anything. That was out of the question, because you don't share your problems with anybody. You just suffer in silence.
Right. And my brothers, it's interesting, too, is that, they did get what they needed. They got the clothes or whatever they wanted, the cars. For me, I think it's because I'm a girl, and, girls were not considered as important as men. And in a lot of cultures, in a lot of scenarios, but in this one especially, it was like that, too, because I'm sure in the camps she was treated worse because she was a woman, too. So,
I'm going to take us to commercial break. We're visiting today with Randi Maggid. The book is Beverly Hills Concentration Camp, A Healing Journey and Memoir. Check it out on Amazon. We're going to be back with Randi and Linda after the break to talk more about the state of women, what happens when you come from an abusive household and the abuse is handed down from history. We'll be back after the break.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
It's merging and reheard.
I always always get a kick out of the warning labels companies attach to prevent lawsuits from the hooky-crooky of this world. A warning label on a dishwasher cautioned not to put any person in the unit. Speaking of dishwashers, one product warning on a television remote control read, "Not dishwasher safe." That's too bad because we know how dirty the remote control gets. In fact, we press the buttons even harder when we know the battery is dead. What are we, part of the ridiculati? A warning on a baby stroller read, "Remove child before folding." Here's one for the blunderbusses and popinjays among us. A label on a letter opener read, "Safety goggles recommended." Call me snarky, but any society that needs this many disclaimers has too many lawyers, pettifoggers, and snollygosters.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with Sandra, Beck, and Linda Franklin. Here's more Powered Up with Beck and Franklin.
This is for all you girls.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Franklin, and we're visiting today with Randi Maggid. And, you know, Randi, you said something very interesting that resonated a lot with me in the earlier segment. You talked about your mother taught you the survival skills that she learned in the camps. And, you know, you're a mother, I'm a mother, and we know that we can only teach our kids what we know. You know, I know that I teach my kids things that are seemingly ridiculous today with the abundance of food, with the abundance of everything we have here in the United States. And I try not to pass on to them a scarcity mentality, but you know, it's hard when you've had parents. In my case, I had a mother who had to survive her own issues and survive things. And, you know, she always had food in her pantry, and excess was not welcomed. And, but I didn't find anything about my mom's life until I was 30. And then a lot of things came out, very traumatic, very hurtful, very painful, very agonizing things, like when I look back now. But as a kid, we just thought mom was weird. We just thought, like, you know, mom had hangups, or mom had these things. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I learned my mother's history. And it was only until I had my own kids that a lot of stuff started making sense. Did you find that for you?
Well, my whole childhood, my mother never discussed the war, ever. She never talked about what happened. She was very silent in general. So the only thing she really talked to me about was food, believe it or not. There was nothing, and maybe how was your day, but nothing beyond that. It was just really food focused, and she was very silent. So I didn't really get much mothering. So really, I feel in a way that I raised myself, and I used other people's families as role models. And I had great role models because I was in this, you know, beautiful affluent area and hanging out with other people's families a lot. And I saw what normal was, or I saw what maybe even better than normal might be. So, I felt...
Well, it's interesting that you bring up food, because one of the things, and my mom has passed on now, but one of the things that like always makes us smile in her memory was she would nobody could ever leave our house without leaving with some food. You know, she'd make somebody a sandwich. Even if you're going down the street, you know, everybody had to leave with something. And food was such a big gift in our household. It was such a big, to have enough to eat. You know, my mother would share with me as she got older, you know, how she just never wanted to be hungry. She never wanted to be cold, you know, things like that really shaped her existence. And, you know, we would laugh, kind of make fun of her, laugh at her as kids, going, you know, Mom, not everybody needs a sandwich when they go. But to her, that was highly symbolic of love and care, and giving everything that you had was kind of wrapped up in this turkey sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I know that feeling. All the neighbors would come to our house, and my mom had, you know, the cakes on the table. Every morning she went to Benish's Bakery on 3rd Street and brought back all these Danishes. And she would have all the cold cuts from the deli and big spreads for anyone who came over. And everyone had to sit down and eat. You know, if it was the roofer or the plumber, they came in. They all came in. And it was an interesting dichotomy to have all that happen and know that when these people left my house, there I was back in there alone with everybody again. And a thing that my mom did, which is so opposite of that generosity in a way, it was making me watch this TV show called Worlds at War every day when I came home from school. So I was basically watching, you know, bodies being mowed into a ditch or bulldozed into a ditch. And I did not know what I was looking at for a long time. I just didn't know why she kept watching that. You know, I had to sort of piece it together later. So it was very... You know, I think my mother was trying to maybe find someone she knew when she was watching those shows, or somehow it gave her some kind of weird comfort. But I had to, you know, watch that, and then I'd go in the kitchen and I'd have, you know, the best chocolate 7-layer cake that anybody could have. So it was a very interesting set of events, and I actually did not know that what my mother went through until later in life, when she finally decided to let my husband and I film her. You know, he has a video camera, he has a degree in film and television, and he filmed us. And I just made up a lot of questions, he made up questions, and we just kept asking her. And so we have some video of her telling us what happened. And of course, we don't know everything because I think she blocked a lot out, because, you know, so many things she was a little confused about or couldn't actually remember.
So as you went on in your life now, so you said you left and you got a job when you were pretty young just to get out of the house. Mm-hmm. And you went to school, right? You went to college?
Well, when I was in high school, when I was 15 and a half, I went and I got a job in Century City. So that I know at that time they didn't really check. I think you had to be 16 years old. But I worked in a clothing store, and I helped sell clothes. That is ironic. I worked in a clothing store, and I helped sell clothes, and I made a living. I made my little check. Not a living, but I made my money. And after that, I would go to the gym. There was a gym on my way home, so I would have more hours away from home. And I looked good because I was working out. And then I would go home. And when I went home, I would really tiptoe into my house because I was really afraid of my oldest brother, the one that yelled like a drum. He was very terrifying to me. He was about 250 pounds. And, you know, I was afraid that whenever he would hear me, he would come running in and screaming at me. And I always was living in fear that he would kill me. It never got to that, but I was always afraid of it.
So I just want to move forward just a little bit to, you know, so then you went to college and you obviously, then you got married and you had, what was the thing, what was the tipping point? Because you were carrying, you hadn't let any of this go, so you're carrying, you might have been out of the house and you might have been doing different things and you might have been a wife and a mother, but all of this is still bottled up inside of you. So what was the tipping point? When did you say, oh my God, I got to do something about this?
I was driving with my family in the car toward my mother's house, you know, for a visit. We were listening to the radio, and I just happened to turn my head left, and I felt something funny in my neck. And then it went away. It was a little sore. I didn't think anything of it, and I woke up the next morning with my left ear stuck to my left shoulder, and I was unable to move my left arm more than about a quarter of an inch. And I thought I was going to be an invalid. I didn't know what to do. Doctors that I went to said I had to have surgery. One doctor said if I didn't have surgery within a week, I would lose all the feeling in my left arm. So something told me, you know, my higher power told me this wasn't the way to go, that I have to find another way. And I did have to take a little bit of Vicodin because my disc in my neck was on my nerve. So it was really painful. So I went on a path to heal myself. I just tried everything that came my way that I would never have done before, that I never really believed in. Corrective chiropractor. I did some network spinal analysis. which is energy work that helps release tension from the spine. And that also with breath work helped me release the traumas and bring back the memories. So I tried many different modalities, but those are the things that work the best for me. So what I really recommend is that people try anything, that might call them, because you never know what's going to work for you.
Well, but did you realize when you had that episode, did they ever diagnose to what it actually was? Well, I guess there's a spiritual diagnosis and a medical diagnosis.
The medical diagnosis was that my disc was hitting my nerve. The spiritual diagnosis is that I was holding in so much trauma that I actually affected my neck. That I had so much in my body that had to come out. And the interesting thing is it worked. I mean, I've released so much. I still do breath work every day. Now I'm doing more shamanic chanting and some other things. I've added more to my ritual, and writing really helps. And I released everything, and I feel better every single day. I mean, I just keep getting better. And it's amazing. And my neck healed. It's like your inner guidance just taking over at some point.
Yeah. Did you share this with your mother ever?
No, she wouldn't understand. she would not understand it. I mean, she knew that I was in pain, but she didn't know anything else.
Wouldn't it be great if she could release some of her fear before she transits to the next dimension? That would really be a blessing, wouldn't it?
It would. And I believe that doing the video with her helped her, because she did get a lot out. She had to remember things. Right. Yeah, I know that it helped her.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot. But I think this is so important that we talk about these things, because there are similarities of children of, especially mothers who've experienced trauma, and how they hand that down to their children because it's all they know.
It's true. And so many people, you don't have to be Jewish, have these traumas. The Armenian people carry a lot of trauma. I mean, the Irish, everybody's got something, and really all these healing methods can help everybody. And, there's so many things in my book that actually pertain to so many different people. It's not just, Jews, basically. So.
Right. I mean, it's anybody, especially from that Depression era parents. I mean, there's a lot.
Look at the fears people are experiencing now because of our new president. The Mexicans. Anybody Muslim. I mean, people are walking around in constant fear now. So yes, they've got to find a release for it, because it'll kill you.
Okay, we're talking today with Randi Maggid, Linda Franklin, and Sandra Beck of Powered Up Talk Radio. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more with Randi about what can we do with our fear. She's an expert at dealing with fear, clearly. We'll be back with her more after the break.
We've got lots more Powered Up with Sandra Beck and Linda Franklin after these messages.
The League of Women Voters reminds you that on Election Day, we are all equal. Please join your friends and neighbors by registering to vote and going to the polls November 8th. Visit www.vote411.org to find out who will be on your ballot and how the voting process works in your community. This election is about our future, and we all need to weigh in.
The first official 4th of July party was held at the White House in 1801. But did you know that countries other than the U.S. celebrate American Independence Day or July 4th? Denmark, Italy, Portugal, and England all have 4th of July parties. In fact, the British celebrate their independence with bungers and fizz gigs, otherwise known as firecrackers, just like in America. Squib is slang for an electric match used in pyrotechnics. Our dog celebrates July 4th every year the same way, by cowering under the bed. Many European celebrations take place, of course, at American military bases. I'd like to send a special thanks to all our armed forces stationed around the world for everything you do to provide freedom and independence to America.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Word.
We're back with Sandra Beck and Linda Franklin. Here's more Powered Up with Beck and Franklin.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Franklin, and we're visiting with Randi Maggid. Her book is Beverly Hills Concentration Camp. We've talked a lot about her history and her book. You're going to love it. You're going to be glad you read it. This is the part of our show where we talk about solutions. We talk about things that we can do, and many people have shared their fears with their children unintentionally, and that doesn't change the fact that as children, we receive things from our parents, and we need to be the generation that stops this fear from being handed down like, a family heirloom. We want our family heirlooms to be lamps and tables and chairs and necklaces and not our fears and negative experiences. So, Randi, you help people in these experiences, help them move through the fear and let it go so that we don't have to transmute them down to our children, and it doesn't have to hand down generation to generation. Can you walk us through what you do or what you teach and what that looks like for our listeners so that we can learn along with you?
Sure. Well, I would say that when you are afraid, you need to realize, do I want to stay here or do I want to move on? So, the fear sort of stabilizes you at the same place. So I say, push through that fear. Get to the point where you can actually ride the wave of fear to get to the other side of it. Because once you get to the other side of it, it's great. It's just a matter of, getting to that place. So I help people get to that place. And another way is immediately go to love. If you feel fear, you go to love. You mix a little love in whatever is going on. If you're having a bad thought, if you are not getting along with someone, mix some love into that. Send them love. If you send them love, everything gets better for you too. So I would say I do that. And then the breath work. It is a 2-stage pranayama yoga breathing that completely changed my life. You breathe into your stomach, into your upper chest, and then you let it go. And it's a meditation. So it sounds like, and you have your eyes closed and your mouth open. You have your mouth open so that you can get out of your head. And you basically relax. And I usually play interesting music that intuitively comes to me that actually triggers people. So the people will breathe and they'll move energy and they'll open their chakras. And it's a beautiful thing that happens to people. They move to the next place. Everyone is always different once they do the breathing. Even one time will change your life. It will change your cells. So if you keep doing it every day, you can see amazing results. So that's part of what I do. And I would say that writing is also a big part of it. If it doesn't have to be writing, it can be painting, it can be pottery, any kind of creativity will help you kind of move through the fear and, express yourself, because as you express yourself, you're releasing the fear. And that's what I would suggest. Those are the things that I do. And also for my children, I say the same thing. I encourage them to speak up when they have a problem. We do have dinner together as often as possible. And it's really wonderful to see that they have their own tools and their own little toolbox of skills. They can say, Mom, I've got a test tomorrow. Can we breathe tonight? You know, it's such a good thing to do, instead of thinking that, I have to have a drink, or I have, something negative, or not that drinking isn't always negative, but instead of choosing some sort of chemical, they're choosing their breath or their life. So their life force, and they're just making themselves stronger.
No, I mean that's fantastic, because I mean it bonds you to your kids, and you're giving them some tools that they can take with them, for their whole life, because fear is going to be there. We have no control of what's going to come at us. We only have control of what we're going to do when it does, right? So if we have this toolbox of different things to take care of it, it's a real gift.
Yes, it is. And
it brings you closer.
It does bring us, we're very close. And also, when you get to a certain point of your healing where you're really moving and you really feel better and you've released so much, there's a shift that happens where you really want to make a difference in the world. And that's what happened with me. And I know it's happened with a lot of my friends as well. You just want to help people. You want to make a difference. You see where there's a problem and you want to go and help. So it's almost as though, you were put into this horrible situation so that you could break through it, so that you could be a compassionate person. Yeah,
but the bottom line is that you're gonna be able to enjoy your life, and that's what it's all about, and that's what this show is all about, giving people different ways so that they can break out of their own prison that they've created for themselves and go out and enjoy life. I believe heaven on earth, and we can have it if we just can get inside and sort of clean out a lot of the other stuff.
Right. And it's amazing how much lighter your body feels when you've released things.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Sandra, are you there or no? I think we lost Sandra. She lives in California as well, and she lives in a canyon, and her reception, sometimes it's really good, and sometimes we lose her in the middle of a show. So I think this is one of those days.
I know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody
You sound like
can
the
hear
commercial.
Me.
Can you hear me now?
There, I'm back.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's vital that we release these fears, because they make us sick. They adjust our behavior, and they can take control over our lives if we don't. They're like horses that run away wild, and they drag us along with it. And we don't even know half the time how fear-based we've become.
It's interesting, and I can actually meet a person. I can see exactly where they're holding that fear in their body, and I could help them just open that up. And it's a matter of maybe being ready for something like this and being ready for a change. I think the people that really want to change and really want to move forward will try alternative healing, and there are some people that are still too afraid to move forward, but hopefully everybody will take a step.
Well, it is. Taking that first step, I think, being aware of it is half the battle, because you can know something is wrong but not put your finger on it.
Right.
And do you find that during the breath work that some of these answers start to come out? Like, does this open up, does this open up things in people that have been closed off?
It does. Sometimes people have epiphanies and they'll actually change their job and have a better life. Some people, and with most people, you do have to see your trauma again for a minute. You have to release, in order to release it, you need to see it. So you really have to be brave and courageous. But that second or so that you see it again is worth it, because the rest, you're talking about the rest of your life. You're talking about feeling good and being happy for the rest of your life, and not passing on that trauma to your kids. And you're not carrying it anymore. So I do see it all the time. I see people going into all sorts of different places. It depends on the person, and every single time you do it, it's different. It's always a different experience.
How do you protect yourself from taking on some of the things that they're releasing?
I do a lot of protective practices every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do absorb people's stuff, and I feel it. After a while, I say to myself, "Oh, this isn't me," and I go down to the beach and I do meditation and I do chanting until I release it. I wear a lot of protective stones, and I surround myself with spiritual light, and I really don't take it on for long if I end up taking anything on. So it's just a matter of becoming more powerful and good at what you're doing. And I step back. I try not to actually get too close to someone's space. I can step back and still help from 2 feet back instead of right on them, right? So I'm good at not taking it on now.
Well, letting go is the answer, and we have to, first of all, we have to recognize what it is we want to let go, and then be courageous enough to look, like as you said, look at it and then let it go. Because once you let it go and stand back and just watch it leave, you're a winner. I mean, that part is gone, and now you've got room for some really good stuff in the moment.
Exactly. And sometimes you don't even know where you're going to go. I didn't know, that I was going to write a book. I didn't know I'd be on this radio show with you, so things just keep coming that are really nice.
Yeah.
And
when you're open.
Pain, when you're open and you don't have pain, it's more about navigating the good things that are coming as opposed to hiding in your fear. So it's just beautiful.
Win-win.
Excuse me?
Absolutely. So maybe we'll do some breathing this week, Sandra.
I think so. I mean, I just think that there's so many opportunities out there for healing, whether it's journaling, therapy, Reiki, massage, acupuncture. What kind of breathing? It's just called breath work?
It's called breath work. It's an ancient pranayama yoga breathing.
Got it. So you can add yoga. I mean, there's so many opportunities for these healing modalities. Acupuncture, am I missing any?
Network spinal analysis is amazing. It's by Donnie Epstein, and I would suggest people look that up also. That's another thing I do. Yeah.
And tapping. I've heard about tapping.
The tapping. I've done the tapping, and for me, the tapping gets rid of the emotional trigger. So you might have a bad memory, but you still remember it, but you don't have the emotional trigger that makes you feel sad anymore. So
that's amazing.
I recommend EFT. And if you guys ever want to get on Skype with me, I could walk you through do a breathwork session. Have you guys?
That would be very cool. Okay, our guest today has been Randi Maggid. You're going to want to get a copy of her book, Beverly Hills Concentration Camp. I encourage you guys to go on your own healing journey and to check out the cover. The cover is spectacular. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of cover art I've ever seen. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Powered Up Talk Radio. On behalf of Linda Franklin, Randi Maggid, and myself, have a wonderful week.
We're so glad you joined us for Powered Up with Beck and Franklin. Sandra Beck, Los Angeles-based single mother and technology company owner, knows what it's like to be fit, funny, and fantastic in your 40s. Linda Franklin, a New Yorker with a successful marriage and